The Harris-Walz campaign is pushing back hard just this hour against comments made by Donald Trump when asked if he expects chaos on Election Day, maybe from people on a terrorist watch list or migrants who have committed crimes. Take a listen.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
NBC's Ali Rafa is reporting from D.C., and I'm joined by MSNBC senior political analyst Matthew Dowd once again. So, Ali, we just heard from Tim Walz in Wisconsin. What did he say in response to Donald Trump's comments there?
Yeah, Chris, that's right. We just heard from Vice President Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, who's campaigning in battleground Wisconsin, specifically in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, with Senators Klobuchar and Baldwin. And he was speaking to a group of students when he reacted to those comments from former President Trump on Fox yesterday, when he called for the military to be used against American citizens, claiming that, quote, the enemy from within the U.S. is more dangerous than foreign adversaries like China and Russia. Governor Walz saying that the former president, quote, crossed a line. Listen to his comments here.
He crossed a line that I have to tell you, in my lifetime, I would have never imagined, because we know our history. Donald Trump over the weekend was talking about using the U.S. Army against people who disagree with him. Just so you're clear about that, that's you. That's what he's talking about. This is not some mythical thing out there. He called it the enemy within. And to Donald Trump, anybody who doesn't agree with him is the enemy. I tell you that not to make you fearful or anything. I tell you that because we need to whip his butt and put this guy behind us.
And Chris, this is especially notable that it is coming from Governor Walz, who is becoming more and more visible, not only on the campaign trail, but also across the airwaves. You see him campaigning there, but also over the weekend, he made his second appearance on Fox in as many weeks. And this is coming as a whole as we see the Harris campaign meet the former president's sharpening of his rhetoric with sharper responses, really leaning into their responses to former President Trump as we continue to see his rhetoric lean on fear and anxiety. We're more and more seeing the Harris campaign respond in real time to all of that, trying to continue, as they've been doing, drawing this contrast in diplomacy, transparency, integrity, trying to do all of that in these last just over 3 weeks until the election, Chris.
Ali Rafa, thank you for that. You know, I was thinking as I was listening to Tim Walz about something that I read about David Plouffe, of course, Harris's senior campaign advisor. He gave an interview was talking about Donald Trump to New York Magazine and said this: the thing to think about is his increasing instability, Project 2025, the notion of a Trump with no guardrails, with a desire for unchecked power. We've talked about that. We've run ads on that. We're going to continue to emphasize that in the end, because that worries all the voters who are remaining out there who haven't decided yet who to vote for. Is that what Tim Walz was doing right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to point out the history of the terms enemy within and what Donald Trump's talking about. And this basically harkens, there's a long history of it, and it's never been good. I mean, it harkens back in our own history against anti-immigrants, anti-Jews, and of course of our own history, talking about the enemy within, telling people why they're struggling is because somebody here is causing them to struggle. It obviously is Joe McCarthy who did all the red baiting, and it also harkens back to what Adolf Hitler did in Germany in the 1930s with what he did with Jews and people from Romania and Catholics, and basically saying they were the enemy within. They were the ones keeping you from succeeding in the course of this. So I think David's right. I think we have to all be very clear about this. And so the choice that's going to be made is this: Donald Trump has not hesitated to say what he wants to do, what his intentions are, and what he's going to do. And we have to believe him at his word in that. And that's the choice. And so no one should be surprised who votes for Donald Trump in the end. And if he wins and he does this, they should not be surprised that what he does is what he said he would do.
You know, this kind of rhetoric from Donald Trump, he basically has very rarely, if ever, paid a price for it, right? I mean, at least among his supporters, there was an article today talking about how the people who support him, when they hear things like this, either, I guess, agree with him or they never actually think he would follow through on it. He's just talking tough. They like him to talk tough, but he's never going to do that. Having said that, again, I'll go back to what David Plouffe said. He said, the voters who are remaining out there who haven't decided yet who they are going to vote for, that's who it sounds to me like a closing strategy is aimed at, reminding them. January 6th, he doesn't kid. If he tells you what he's going to do, believe him, essentially, right?
Yeah, and if you value freedom and liberty in our country, and even if you think he's on your side on certain issues, there's no question that there's no insurance that you're going to be protected from what he wants to do in the course of this. I mean, I hate to say this, but we have a long history in America where these types of appeals have some success. It worked against Asians in the 1800s. It worked against blacks. It worked against women in the course for short periods of times. And then obviously we evolved and perfected ourselves. But it's amazing that this type of language is being used by Donald Trump in the 21st century in a diverse democracy that we have. But it has worked in our past. And hopefully it's not going to work this year or in our future. But that's what this election is about.